Hello, beautiful community. This is just a personal reconnect where we'll just say a couple of words about how we might feel about the next month or two of the war of Ukraine's counteroffensive. And that's just because I'm working on what will hopefully be a special video for the main channel that will have some use and maybe impact. And with my health and with a couple of medical appointments I've got to get done, it may be that we get there on Sunday. But I'm very excited about it. So meanwhile, I just want to connect, quickly. And I acknowledge that some of you feel really gung-ho about Ukraine's counteroffensive. Others feel, what if there is limited progress and what's the West going to do next to support Ukraine and where are we going to land? And yet others feel, what can I do? And actually, to that, I have a serious answer that's too long for now, but beginning of a short answer is keep your damn democracy. Because if all Western democracies sustain over the next 10 years, that should be enough to asphyxiate Mr. Putin. Mr. Putin's project is predicated on freezing the war, having a lower level conflict for a few years, and then escalating once we have dropped the ball, once we have elected various kinds of anti-democratic politicians who are more sympathetic to Mr. Putin, once we've engaged in all kinds of highly distracting internal conflicts that put us in a place where we can't figure out our foreign policy strategy at all. Now, what's actually going to happen over the next couple of months is that we may get a sense of how much progress Ukraine can make. And Ukraine could surprise us. It's also possible that because the Russian regime is an imploding empire in slow motion, it's also possible that some giant bits begin to fall off it and it's completely capable of catastrophic military collapses that are unforeseen. But these are the more exceptional scenarios, at least in the sense that the major global actors, the United States, China, India, expect scenario A to be limited Ukrainian progress, right? Scenario B, C, D may be much more Ukrainian progress, but the preponderance of expectation is that there is not going to be dramatic progress, right? And we would like that not to be true. If that's what happens, we're going to have a much more serious conversation in the West about how to sustain support for Ukraine, how to justify it. And we're going to face the need for a different kind of conversation, right? Where some of the old arguments for supporting Ukraine may no longer work and new ones may be needed. In Ukraine itself, there would be, right, if there is the clear evidence that there's limited progress being made with a counteroffensive, there may need to be a kind of a renegotiation, because the rough deal the Zelensky regime has with the Ukrainian people is that there's going to be a short to medium term victorious war, right? A medium to long term war, which absolutely sustains Ukraine's independence, but does not bring anything close to making Ukraine whole again, a return of all Ukraine's territories. That requires a different negotiation between Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. And that's going to be tough for the Ukrainian government, because if we're dealing with a less obviously victorious war and a longer war, then the Ukrainian people will be asking more questions of their government, right? You can sustain a much more consolidated fever pitch coming together for a year and a half, but you can't quite do that, for 4 years. And we'll be having all of these conversations as we go. And, admittedly, the next few weeks are uncertain. And let me tell you one thing, though, before I turn off this phone and get on with the main channel video. The Putin regime will collapse. The only question is, how much destruction is it going to cause before it collapses, right? And that means even a Putin regime that manages to take advantage of the kind of decline of Western democracy that it's relying on, which is unlikely to happen, right? But even if that takes place, and even if the Putin regime feels it can take advantage of it, this is a project that's going to fail, right? And I think we are still not quite clearly understanding what kind of a project it is, why it is as destructive as it is, why it is a project you can't negotiate with, right? Why it's a project that needs to be stopped. And I suppose the next stopping point of these conversations for us will be the next video on the main channel, about why so persistently so much of the Western left, not the Ukrainian, not the Polish left, but why so much of the Western left have so persistently misunderstood the Putin regime. But this is a damn thing that'll collapse, and it's an imploding thing, and whatever happens, right, it ain't gonna end well for Mr. Putin and his regime. But the trouble is, what form, right, this immolation will take, self-immolation will take, we don't yet know, and it could be more or less tied to catastrophic local and global consequences. We're going to see about that. Let's acknowledge today 15 years since the Russian invasion of Georgia. It's also, on a personal note, a recognition day for myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is my condition. Today it's severe ME day. I was severe for 3 years, which means sort of no talking, no walking, no anything. If you want to know more about that, follow my Twitter. I've written a bit about it there, but my Twitter is also just a place where I more regularly share thoughts, 70% of which are about politics, Western democracy, and Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. So thank you for reconnecting with me. I'll reconnect with you a few more times before we have that special video on the main channel, I'm sure. Meanwhile, lots of love and bye-bye.